How does a girl who thought she was too skinny, too shy, and too ordinary end up defining the entire look of the 1960s? She became the original supermodel, and nearly 6 decades after finding overnight fame at the age of 16, Twiggy remains one of the most famous fashion icons in history. But back in 1966, Twiggy wasn't hunting for fame. She wasn't dreaming of catwalks or chasing a career. She was just a London schoolgirl living a normal teenage life. And then one haircut, literally one, turned her into the face of a decade. Overnight, she went from Neasden to the covers of Vogue, from homework to photoshoots, from anonymity to becoming the face of 66.
I didn't plan being discovered age 16. You know, I grew up a skinny little kid, hated what I looked like, but I think... So to me, it was as big a shock to me in 1966 that happened.
But behind the lashes and the mod silhouette was a girl who never saw any of it coming. Fame hit fast. She was suddenly in studios, interviews, press conferences, expected to perform, to charm, to carry a cultural moment she didn't plan for and barely understood at 16. And then, at just 21, at the height of her success, she walked away. So what really happened in those 4 whirlwind years? Before she became Twiggy, before the lashes, the headlines, the Vogue covers, she was simply Leslie Hornby from Neasden, the youngest of 3 daughters in a working-class London family that never imagined the fashion world would touch their lives. She was shy, skinny, artistic, happiest sketching clothes or flipping through magazines. Modeling wasn't a dream. It wasn't even a possibility. In the 60s, working-class girls didn't become models. That belonged to posh girls, as she later said. But she was curious. And sometimes curiosity opens doors you never knew existed. Through a friend of a friend, she was told about a woman who worked at a magazine, someone who might be able to help her get into modeling. Nervous but hopeful, she went to meet her.
So I met this woman. I was quite upset, really, because she said, "You'll never really make a model because you're too small and you're much too slim." And so I think I cried on the way home on the bus.
But even as she cried, there was a glimmer of hope. The woman had also said something else. "I'm going to do some test shots of your face because you've got a very interesting face." Sometimes, one tiny comment is enough to change a direction. And then it happened. Those photographs were hung in House of Leonard, a posh Mayfair salon she felt too intimidated to even sit in. Leonard himself spotted her and asked to cut her hair. She was too shy to refuse. But that haircut, captured again by Ladigan, ended up exactly where it needed to go, into the hands of Daily Express journalist Deirdre McSherry. One interview, one photograph, one headline, Twiggy, the face of 66. She woke up the next morning and her life was unrecognizable. Photographers were calling, agents were calling, newspapers were calling, and she was still just a 16-year-old schoolgirl doing her own makeup in the mirror. But she wasn't navigating it alone. Justin de Villeneuve, her boyfriend, stepped in to handle what she couldn't. The bookings, the contracts, the reporters who wouldn't stop. At 16, she had no idea how to manage sudden fame. He did. And whether people saw him as protective or controlling, one thing was clear. He became the person organizing the chaos while she was still trying to understand it. When Twiggy's photograph appeared in the Daily Express with the headline, "The Face of 66, it didn't just make her recognizable. It dropped her into the center of a cultural moment she never even imagined. One day, she was a shy schoolgirl from Neasden with a new haircut, and suddenly she was the visual symbol of a decade that was speeding up faster than anyone could follow. People weren't just looking at her. They were projecting an entire youth movement onto her face. What made it surreal was how quickly everything escalated. She didn't chase fashion. Fashion came chasing her. After Barry Ladigan's portrait went up in Leonard's salon, magazine editors started calling, and within weeks, the most powerful woman in fashion, Diana Vreeland, saw her image. Vreeland didn't just like her. She saw something in Twiggy that had nothing to do with the lashes or the haircut. Vreeland had a gift for sensing what fashion needed before the rest of the world realized it. She didn't predict trends. She created them. And when she declared Twiggy the next big thing and brought her to American Vogue, everything shifted. Twiggy's world stretched far beyond London's mod scene. Suddenly, Twiggy wasn't just a British phenomenon. She was global. New York embraced her with the same excitement London had. Her first trip to New York made it clear just how big things were becoming. Bert Stern filmed her arrival as crowds gathered at the airport, shouting her name like she was part of the British invasion. She was still only 17, still figuring out confidence, still figuring out herself. And suddenly, she was a global phenomenon. Looking back, she described it this way. Photographers responded to her look instantly. Barry Ladigan had already given her the defining portrait. Richard Avedon wanted to reinterpret her in ways that felt almost cinematic. Melvin Sokolsky took her into the streets of New York, construction sites, department stores, even the zoo, until the crowds following her became so intense that he printed masks of her face and handed them out so the shoot could continue. Even her duplicates caused a scene. And through all of that, she was simply trying to keep up. She wasn't trained, she wasn't coached, she was just reacting, learning the job in real time, learning the business by surviving it. The lashes, the haircut, the miniskirts, they became iconic fast. But behind every cover and campaign was a girl still getting used to the idea that the world suddenly viewed her as a trend, a movement, a symbol. Meanwhile, the industry kept multiplying her image. Vogue covers, mod advertisements, brand campaigns. Her face was everywhere, and the Twiggy phenomenon stopped belonging only to her. She didn't plan to become a cultural figure. She was turned into one overnight. And with every new city, new shoot, new headline, the gap between the teenager she was and the icon she'd become grew a little wider.
That first year of modelling after I was discovered in February '66 was like a whirlwind. I was a schoolgirl and I was a mod.
She was grateful for it, overwhelmed by it, and trying to understand it all at once. For all the magazine covers and fashion shoots, the part of Twiggy's rise that's hardest to imagine now is what she had to face off camera. She was only 16, still figuring out who she was, and suddenly she was sitting in rooms full of grown men who didn't always treat her like a teenager, or even like a person. The 60s loved the idea of an it girl, but it didn't always know how to speak to one respectfully. Most of her early interviews had the same rhythm: praise the lashes, ask about her weight, make jokes about her age, and then push questions she was never prepared for. She wasn't media trained, she wasn't rehearsed. She just showed up because everyone told her that was part of the job. And while she usually handled it with polite, almost instinctive self-control, the tone around her often felt more like inspection than conversation. The most telling moment is the footage from New York, her first trip to the United States, a moment that should have been pure excitement. Instead, she walked onto a studio stage expecting a simple chat and found Woody Allen standing there with questions that made no sense for a teenage girl. He asked about philosophers, serious political issues, academic topics meant to embarrass her rather than understand her.
At that point, my stomach turned and I thought, oh my God, because I didn't, I was 16. No.
I mean, he was trying to intimidate you and
embarrass her.
You can see the exact second she realizes what's happening. Her face freezes for a moment, but she keeps her composure, answering what she can and laughing off what she can't. It's the kind of clip that only makes sense when you remember the era. Young women in the public eye weren't protected the way they are now. Interviewers often crossed boundaries, and audiences accepted it as entertainment. Even Twiggy has spoken about how shocking some of those comments feel when she watches the old footage today.
But it's quite interesting, the social aspect of it, of how things have changed. I mean, some of the things that some of those guys said to me, they'd never get away with it in a million years now.
But what stood out wasn't the disrespect. it was how she handled it. She never snapped, never lashed out, never let the camera see how uncomfortable she might have been. She stayed polite, steady, and surprisingly grounded for someone who had been famous for less than a year. And that calmness became part of her appeal. While the world was treating her like a symbol, she was just trying to navigate the noise without losing herself. Behind the scenes, the pace never slowed. Photo shoots during the day, press events at night, public appearances squeezed in between flights. She would go from smiling on a runway to getting questions about her weight backstage. From being praised for her look to being teased for being quiet or shy. Every day required a new kind of confidence she was still learning on the spot. And somewhere in that whirlwind, you can sense an early shift happening. The moment a teenager starts understanding the difference between the life she's living and the life everyone thinks she's living. Fame was exciting, but it was also exhausting. The world adored Twiggy, but very few people paused to ask how Leslie felt about any of it. And that gap between the image and the girl behind it is what eventually pushed her toward the next chapter. By the time Twiggy turned 18, she had already lived the kind of career most models never see in a lifetime. But the next transformation in her story didn't come from a photo shoot or a headline. It came from within. The more Twiggy worked, the more she began to recognize her own curiosity. She loved the shoots, but she also loved the people around them. The stylists, the dancers, the actors she met backstage. And when director Ken Russell approached her about starring in The Boyfriend, it didn't feel like an escape from modeling. It felt like the next step in a life that had already changed so many times. She had never acted, never danced professionally, and had no formal training. But Russell insisted she could do it, and Twiggy has said many times that his belief pushed her past her own fear. She took classes, rehearsed for hours, and put in the kind of work people rarely associate with a girl whose fame seemed so accidental. When the film premiered, she wasn't just good. She was celebrated. 2 Golden Globes, Best Actress in a Musical and Best Newcomer. The awards weren't about her being famous, they were about her talent. And once she stepped into performance, she didn't step back. Broadway followed, and her starring role in My One and Only became another chapter that critics didn't see coming. She earned a Tony nomination and proved again that she wasn't defined by her first success. She could sing, dance, act, and she could reinvent herself without losing the warmth and groundedness that had made people love her in the first place. What made this phase of her life so remarkable wasn't ambition. It was the fact that she was still so young. And yes, she really did quit modeling at just 21. At the very top, when everyone expected her to keep going, she simply stepped away and chose a different life. She was ready to move on to other ventures, famously saying, "You can't be a clothes hanger for your entire life." While the world was still clinging to the Twiggy image, she was already building an entirely new identity, one shaped by choice rather than accident. It's a pattern you see throughout her story. Instead of letting the industry decide who she was, she kept imagining new versions of herself and stepping into them before anyone could label the transition. And as her career widened, so did her life. Acting led to music, television, stage work, and later, fashion design. Each chapter connected by the same quiet instinct she had always followed, even when she was 16 and just hoping for a normal life. The girl who never planned any of it had turned the chaos of early fame into something steady, creative, and completely her own. Even after she stepped away from modeling, her life never stopped moving. She built a long career on her own terms, acting in films, recording music, hosting television, and later stepping onto Broadway for a role that earned her a Tony nomination. She kept reinventing herself without ever chasing spectacle, and somehow managed to stay both iconic and approachable for every new generation that discovered her. In the 2000s, she returned to fashion in a different way, creating clothing collections and becoming a familiar face on British TV. And today, in her 70s, She reflects on all of it with a kind of calm clarity. Grateful for the opportunities, but also honest about how surreal those early years were. What's the first image that comes to your mind when you think of Twiggy? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.